Hi, welcome back to another web development video where I show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this video, I'm going to respond to a discussion that I had posted on the channel, just asking, what do people want to see more of? If there are questions that you have, what would you like me to answer? And one of the responses was to show design from a positive aspect. A lot of times we look at what's bad and then we look at the negative and then we say, how can we make it better? But one of the other ways that we can learn is by looking at what people are doing well, and then learning why do people say this is good design. So that's sort of a positive reinforcement as opposed to a negative. And so I think for designers, it's normal to want to just take something crappy and make it look good. So a lot of times that's why we come from that. It's a little bit more difficult, maybe on our humility, to look at something that's already very good and to break it down and say this is what makes it so good. Even though in our hearts, when we see it, we sort of rejoice and we're like, wow, that is really well done. So please forgive all the designers out there who come from a negative aspect. So in this video, we'll take one of the premier design companies in the world, maybe in the history of the world, and that is Apple. And I just went to their website and took a screenshot. Now their website is as impeccably designed as their products are. Design it's something that the company does. So whether they're making a physical product or they're making a digital product, they're putting a lot of forethought and effort into the actual design of the product. So I just took a screenshot, and this is what it looked like whenever I took the screenshot. I don't know. It was a few days ago. And I've just brought it into Adobe XD. And I just wanted to go through sort of some low-level types of things. This video is not going to be super long, but just wanted to kind of highlight some different things that they're doing that maybe you can learn how to adjust into your own designs. So it's very on brand. That's the first thing. So their design style makes its way through everything that they do. Simplicity, elegance, straightforward. The product takes the lead in everything that they do, including their advertising. And some people would even say at times Apple is very sexy. So the way that they reveal the product shows some character of the product, not just, it's almost like they're creating characters in some way. So everything here is very clear, bold, large. This goes, side to side on your screen. Product images are very large so that you can see them, and so are product names for the most part. This is a very scannable page. You can tell that they want you to look here, right? So this is all for reference if you need it. But what they really want you to do is to scroll down the page and look at the products that they're featuring on the home page. So as you scroll down, you can see, again, large images, large typography for whatever the section name is. And then there are some calls to action in each of these large sections. And we have something here, so they're advertising their television product. Excuse me. Obviously, these are our flagship products for the iPhone. They're also pushing a new product, which is their Apple TV service. There are new things here, but you can see that they're not as large, right? So these three things carry a lot more weight on the screen and in your mind than these two things are. So you can take in two things at the same time. Up here you can only take in one. So whenever you can only take in one thing, that means your focus is wholly on that thing. But once I get down here, they start splitting my focus into a left and right sort of pattern. That's one way that you can show hierarchy. So if you want something that people want to focus on, make it big, full screen, and there's nothing there except the product, the name, whatever marketing message that you want. And then the reader is going to move this way. They're taking the whole thing in and moving down. Once they get here and they start splitting the screen, you're going to start moving from this text down over this text. Maybe you start moving like this, or maybe you do the zigzag pattern like this. It just depends on what catches your eye. Because this is so bold and blue, this one might catch your eye first. And whenever I'm here and I'm not looking down here necessarily, this is the next thing I go to, this big Mother's Day. So you're talking about a sale, right? So you want to make sure that people see the sale, whatever you're doing. This is smaller in context to this. So I would probably move this way. This one is fun. So if you're sort of into games or you're into animations or things like that, you're probably going to be drawn to something like this. And then this is probably a separate read. And then the final section we see down here is quite a bit smaller than everything else on the page, you can see. And this obviously is supposed to be like a secondary, tertiary sort of read. So obviously, even with these two things here, these take up way more mental space for you than any of this stuff. It's hard to read. It's the copy at the bottom of the page. These links exist primarily for navigation, but also secondarily for SEO purposes. So it makes the homepage easier to crawl whenever you have your main links to different places down here. But this site is also, it's huge, it's massive. And one of the really interesting things about Apple is that they've created this massive website that has very few things on the front page. So we have all these links here, but there's not nearly that many corresponding links on the front page. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sections with probably less than 20 actual links. So you can see that each of these, there's a couple of links here. I don't think it goes anywhere if you hit this entire thing. I don't think it's a link or a button, but some of these larger ones down here I believe are, but like here there's a couple of different very nondescript links, a couple of links here. So not everything has 2 links, but you can see that compared to down here, there are very few links, and then there's just your basic navigation at the top, right? So this goes to your main, like, super top level pages where you can learn more generally about the iMacs, and then you can learn about the iPads, the iPhones, and those are just sort of general overarching pages that send you off into smaller pages after that. They have a really basic little announcement here about shipping, and I don't know, I love the simplicity of it. It's hard. This is a very hard thing to do if you've ever worked in a corporation, which I've worked in one now for almost 4 years. And we also have an e-commerce site, and it's very difficult to get buy-in from a lot of different departments and a lot of different marketing people in order to make a homepage this sparse, I guess is the right word, because everybody wants to be on the homepage. That's the page that's going to get the most traffic. And so everybody's pet project, or everybody's the thing that they're trying to sell, they want it to be on the home page. So it becomes a difficult job for a designer to be able to get all of the needs and wants onto the home page. Apple has, whether through Steve Jobs doing this, or it's just the people that they hire, or it's their art directors or something, they're committed to taking as much as possible, it seems, off of the front page. They can't just have one product on there and then go home. It can't be that simple. But they have stripped down, compared to all the things that they could put on the website, compared to all the shopping things that they could put, compared to, any questions, cool things. They have enough money to make the coolest little widgets and things like that, but they refrain from that, and they put only the things that they're committed to on the front page, and then there are links off to those things. But you feel design restraint all the way through an Apple product, and that's one of the things that people love so much, is that there's a restraint. They could do anything, literally. They're the wealthiest company in the world, so they could literally do anything, and they choose not to. They choose to have a particular vision for their products and for their website and for their software, and they stick with that vision, and they see it all the way through, and they consider the ramifications all the way through their products. One thing that might be helpful for you as we look, so that's sort of the big broad overview. As we look through the site, I just went through and sort of blocked out a really low fidelity wireframe of what their homepage looks like. So in general, you have your these little circles or icons, you have your links up here, you have your announcement, and then you have these blocks here, which are, I don't have any content in them. If you're doing your first pass of a wireframe, maybe this would be sketched out on a piece of paper. I've done it here in Adobe XD, but I just sort of overlaid boxes over the top of the actual page itself. And so this is the wireframe that I would have come up with for sort of reverse engineering the website. This is where the wireframe would have probably started. So you would have these big header sections, and then you have this nice grid that splits off into 6 1/2 boxes that go full screen. And then you have all this filler content down here, the text, and then you have your columns of links to different places in the site, and then you have your copyright information at the bottom. So when you're doing a wireframe, blocking out just generally, okay, this section is going to be this. Some people put an X through here to show that this is an image, or you might do a small, it depends on how you see it, because you could do the whole thing as an image. That may be what they did, and then this text is just up floating in this negative space up here, or they may have just taken the image itself like this, and then this text and this image, and it's just on a black background. So I'm not exactly sure what they did. I didn't dig through their code or anything, but that's exactly what they've done here. So I figure that for consistency's sake, that's probably what they did. So this at least is as big as this, if not the entire width of this section and height. And then they have just this, they built in this negative space at the top in the center. They could have just as easily put the text here. And same thing here. Some of these, it's just hard to tell where the image is because they've either included the negative space in the code in the section, or they've included the negative space into the actual image itself. So this is just a square image that has this negative space already built in. But you can see some really beautiful things going on here design wise. But generally when you're doing sort of a first pass at your wireframes, you want to just generally block out, okay, here's a section, how does this all fit together, what's going to go in here, that kind of thing. And then the second thing I did was I did a little bit more high fidelity, so we might call this a medium fidelity. So it doesn't have actual text or anything like that on it, which a higher fidelity mock-up would have the actual text and stuff like that. But this is still blocking it out. But I'm blocking it out, but allowing you to see that there's a little bit more detail in the blocking it out. So I've just overlaid the actual website. The actual website is underneath, and I think I blocked out a different page. I blocked out not the home page. Oh, what did I block out? Blocked out the Mac page. Yeah, okay, so this page here is the one I went through and I blocked it out a little bit. And this is, I just wanted to show you another way that we can sort of reverse engineer a website and try to get a sense of what they're doing. So you can see underneath, you know, if I remove that, you can see that this, you know, this image is here. And what I did was I just sort of overlaid all the boxes and everything on it. And one of the cool things I wanted to show was if you use the layout tool here, I laid it out. I laid out the elements to this 12-column grid. So this is just your sort of like basic 12-column grid. That's the default in XD. So I didn't try to match the actual grid on the website, although it matched pretty well. You can see that underlying everything is basically this 12-column grid. So you can see that most of the website, it follows along with this 12-column grid, so that when we put it back, you know, most everything actually lines up really well to this grid. There's some things here that are a little bit off, and these icons will be based on the grid itself. So my grid is not perfectly whatever theirs is, at least for each section, but generally you can see that Apple, just like everybody else in the world, follows this 12-column grid sort of style. And then, you know, these would just be full with elements and things like that. So some things to note here. If I just take this and move it out of the way, then we can see the wireframe here. So here's the wireframe with our top header. These are all the different types of desktop computers and accessories and all that kind of stuff. So these are your sublinks to different pages, and then there's a little bit of an announcement, and then here is your main call to action, your main section, and then they have some other still prominent, but they're putting sort of more things on the page here. They have two of these larger call to actions, but you can see that these three buttons when you're on the page are bright blue, and they really stand out. So things that stand out because of their color, like this, and you can see here that these buy buttons, even though they're very small, they really stand out on the page. And as you're sort of skipping down the page, your eye will bounce, bam, 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 bam. They'll bounce to these little blue sections, even more, because this is sort of drowned out. This is sort of gray on gray, so there's nothing particularly exciting about these images. They're just there to bring context to whatever they're trying to say. Here, a big pop of color, right? So you see, as you scroll down the page, there's these little things, and then here, this big section of color. You come down a little bit farther, and again they split the screen, so this is more eye-catching. This divides your mind a little bit, so now you're having to look between two different things, so the focus goes from 1 to 2. You can see here this nice group of 3, so you're going to read down through the page this way, and then one way or the other, depending on which of these things get your attention. So on this page, you know, they basically look the same. They have same color balance here, very colorful images. So it just comes down to, when you're reading this, does this catch your attention here, or does this? So you're going to sort of bounce this way or bounce this way. And then again, they bring you back down in a V shape. So they start here, they bring you down this kind of like a diamond shape here. And so they're leading you down the page, giving you a little bit of variety, but they're sort of controlling how you move down the page. One thing to note is that center aligned elements, they tend to push you down the page. So they don't push you left and right, they push you down the page. So if you want to push someone down the page and you want them to scroll down through that section, center aligning things is a very powerful way to do it. Providing these sorts of, it's like a V shape or a triangle. So this one, this one is a triangle shape, and you can see that. So they bring you down and they split you off. And then when they come down to the next section, they sort of invert the triangle. And now they're pushing you from these two sections down straight into this thing here. So again, they're pushing your focus into this area and sort of bringing you down the page. If instead they had gone from 2 to 4, now they're sort of dividing your mind, and hierarchically they're creating 4 things in one space, which automatically makes them a little bit less important. But when they divide your mind and then they bring you back to a space, now they're refocusing you. Okay, this is really important because this is the single thing that you can see on the page, and you can see it here. So they divide you by coming down here with this triangle here, and then they invert the triangle and bring you back down to here. Really, it's right here. So they're just drawing you right to this built-in apps header. So you can see how they're varying how they set up the page in order to keep driving you down the page. So each of these is like a little thing that you can do. Maybe people will do that, maybe they won't. So whatever is your first tab, if you're going to have tabs, that should be the one that you want people to read. So they drive you down to the center section. Again, everything's center aligned, very powerfully center aligned. And then again, they drive you down to another center aligned section. Everything there is center aligned, which drives you down to this section. And now they begin to spread you out horizontally. And I think once you start spreading people out horizontally, it allows you to put, allows you to put more information onto the page, but it's also going to divide their attention. So I would, if there's something that you need people to see, center align it, push it right to the middle of the page. People are not going to miss it. Take up the whole page if you need to. If it's the most important thing, that's why you see heroes with like an image and a call to action that take up the entire page, is because if you don't see anything else, I don't want you to have an excuse not to see this. Okay, so that's the thinking behind a full page hero. So if that's what you need and that's your key thing that you want people to do, then you need to put it out there, and don't be afraid to design it so that that is front and center, like in the center of the stage, so that no one misses it. Nothing around it, nothing distracting. And that's one of the beautiful things about looking at the Apple website, is that there's nothing distracting the eye from one place to another. There's no cute tricks. It's just text that's hierarchically placed, images that are hierarchically placed. And whenever they get down here, now they're trying to, you can see there's a lot more information for you to process. These things, most people are not going to process all of the information down here. If you're looking for them, then you'll probably find them. But what they want is up here, is for everyone to see it, to buy it. All their main calls to action are right here to learn about the product that they're featuring at this moment. And then if you need variation, then they split you off into 3, and there's some variation there. And then these are sort of sub, accessories and things like that are sub. They're related, but they're not the actual product. These are just for informational purposes, in case you happen to be looking for these types of things. But now they start selling you. And so they move from purchase, they move from showcasing the product now to telling you or teaching you why you should have it. So that's another part of the Apple website, and a part of design is telling a story. You show, you sell, and then after that you have sort of carte blanche to be able to either use navigation to help people go off. So I've sold you, do you still want to buy it? Then go. If you don't want to buy it, maybe you'll like these other things. So that's sort of the story. Are you interested? I'm going to give you another call to action, maybe at the bottom, so that I can narrow you back down to one action, and then you can take that action, or I'll broaden you back out at the footer where maybe you get some more choices about things to go for. So they're pushing this very hard. They push you down through this section. These are features. The operating system and iCloud are two of the main features for this. Built-in apps are a main feature. Professional apps are a main feature. And then here, maybe you already have a Macintosh and you want to do more with it, right? So they're starting to push you into, okay, these are applications, as opposed to, let me tell you about the fact that we do have applications. Let me show you some of the applications that you can do. And how can you use our product? So that's sort of where they are here. You can use it for education, higher education. You can use it for business. So they're giving you some examples, even showing you their product in a product shot, which is good strategy. So how can I be one of these people, right? You want to help the person envision themselves as one of these particular people. You got this guy here. He's talking, he's controlling the group, and he's a Mac user. He's the one in focus. You can't really see these two. He's the main thing, right? And then we have, you broaden the user back out. Okay, maybe that's not what you're looking for. Here's a bunch of other choices. But you wouldn't put all of these choices in the middle of the page, because that's like interrupting yourself. You're giving a sales pitch and all of a sudden you say, oh, well, hey, if you're not interested, here's these 5 things, and let me get back into my sales pitch. So it doesn't work like that. You're sort of moving down the page, being sold. So that's a sales technique, marketing technique. Learn how to tell a story of the page, not just the product, but how can I tell the story of this page? So when you're designing, thinking like a storyteller. So you show them, you get the enticement at the beginning, and some people, you put that call to action to buy and they're ready to buy. If not, if they're new to the product, then you want to try to market it to them, sell them, help them to see what are the benefits to the user to buy a Mac as opposed to buying a PC. So so we have this sort of triangle shape here driving you down the page, and you can see it a little bit more easily here. You can see how sort of cluttered it starts to get up here, and then here totally clear and totally free. If we zoom in, like this would be the size of our page, right? Something like that. And so you can see as you scroll down, this whole section center aligned. There's nothing on the right and nothing on the left over here. Everything is center aligned and pushing you down the page. And then you get to another section that takes up basically 100%. Nothing on the left, nothing on the right. And again, it's just driving you down the page, down the page. And then when you get here, all of these things are, they're going to be 100% wide like this. And then these are very graphic elements, and that's one of the last things I wanted to show you was look at all of the text. So these white boxes are with the border are text, and the dark boxes are images, and these really dark pills are buttons, right? So you have all of these should be also grayed out. So these should also be this color here, because those are images too. But you can see all of this white space and all of the text. Look at all this text that's on the page. This is a super duper light color that you can barely see, which doesn't distract at all. It just helps to separate these things from one another. But you can see text all the way down the page, super text heavy from the top down. But when you get to this section right here, look at all of these images and how heavy it is. Now, from one perspective, sales copy can do a lot for you. So having really good text that speaks to someone can do a lot for you, especially if someone is very familiar with the product, which most of the world is really familiar with Apple products. You don't need me to, you don't need to show it to me all the time, you know, in these amazing different ways, because I've held an iPhone, I've used a Mac, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different with Macintosh than with your product. Whatever you need to show or say should help you with your product or with your client's product, but text can do a lot. So don't think that you have to have a bunch of super amazing images all the time. And sometimes an image can distract from the message that you're trying to speak. And you can see down here that they put a lot of their image, sort of image marketing, at the very bottom of the page. Now, I don't work at Apple. I've never worked there, so I don't know what their thinking was. But I know from a pragmatic standpoint as a web developer, putting all of these full screen images and half screen images down at the bottom of the page is going to help your load time. So if all I have to load at the top of the page is some small images here, you see, look how small these images are. If that's all I have to load at the top of the page, the user, you can see this dotted line, that's the cutoff line, the fold of just a typical, you know, 1900 by whatever monitor. So there are only these small images here, which are icons. They could be SVG icons, I don't know, which would be super small. And then this image here, there's one image that's loading that I can see to the top of the page. And if that whole rest of the page is only loading these small images along the way, then that gives there's no way that the user is going to process all this information and get all the way down to here where they start seeing full screen images. So that gives you a good 2 to 5, 8 seconds before the user is even going to be able to scroll down to here. So that gives you more processing time to load the page. So if you need to put heavy images on the page, I would suggest pushing them farther down the page, just like Apple's done here. So the bulk of this page, I would almost guarantee you, is in this section here. Because it's not text heavy, you can see there's only, you know, a few pieces of text in each of these full screen boxes. It's very image heavy. But up here, a lot of this is so text heavy. All this is just going to load almost instantaneously on a high-speed internet connection, because it's mostly blank space and text. So another thing to consider whenever you're doing design, and why a lot of people would say, you know, you should follow Apple's lead with the simplicity and text-heavy typography-driven design, is because it just loads faster, honestly, than if you're doing these big, amazing, you know, hero videos and stuff like that. Now, if your product is brand new, and it's hard to explain with text, maybe you need a video at the top of the page, and then you just got to do what you can to optimize the heck out of it and make sure that it loads fast enough and it's also high enough quality. So that becomes a tricky sort of thing. Or if you need an animation in the header, you just got to do what you can to make it as optimized as you can. But if you can sell your product with text, then push that text to the top of the page, because then it'll load much faster. And when it loads faster, the user's happy, they use less data, and Google is very happy. So any search engine is going to be looking at how fast does your site load, and especially Google has marked that as as one of their ranking factors. So the faster the site loads compared to its competitors, the higher it's going to go up in the rankings. That's one factor for ranking. And the last part is, most people are going to go to your website on a mobile device. Mobile devices are inherently not as powerful as a desktop device. So if most of your people are going to be on mobile, you need that site to come up relatively quickly. And if someone's on 3G or, God forbid, 2G still, then they deserve to be able to see your website as well. They went there and they want to see it. So don't restrict those people by making your page super top heavy. Help them get into the page, because if it loads quickly, they'll give you some grace as they go down the page if things are still loading down the page. So that's one thing that people don't really tell you a lot of. They say, oh, if the page doesn't load, then they just go away, and every second you lose 20% of the people or whatever. But if your page loads quickly, at least perceived to load quickly at the top, and then it's still loading as they go down, will they leave? Probably not, because they've seen enough that they'll give you that grace to wait. People used to give it to you on page load. They don't give it to you anymore if it takes too long. So just one of those little tricks. Google talks about this a lot, about even inlining your CSS and all that kind of stuff to the top of the page. That way you don't have to do a bunch of requests back and forth to the server to get that information the first time. That it's just right in the HTML itself, which will speed up your website. But it makes it more difficult to maintain in the future. So I hope this is not rambling to you. I hope there's some nuggets of gold in here. This is sort of based on my experience. I've been watching Apple for a long time. I'm not a Mac user or an Apple user, not a fanboy, but I am a fan of their design style. So if I had to choose someone to work for, I would want to work for them, because I feel like my style is way more in line with what they do, and I tend to mimic them in design. And some of that is because I develop code, and some of it is because it's just personal style. I like that sort of Swiss typography and grid-based style. But if you follow some of these precepts that they're doing, I think that it will significantly improve your design. So if you just think through, even doing an exercise like this where you take the page and you sort of block out the elements. You don't have to put anything specific in there. Just block it out. And all I did was I took this and I put it, I'm using Adobe XD, but I just put this right underneath. I sent it to the back, and then all I did was I took boxes and lines and I just went over every single section. Now I did this while the grid was on like this, so that I could sort of line it up to a grid, so that when I took away the under layer of the actual page, it wouldn't look like crap. It would look like it was built to a layout. So you can see that it goes, to the column edges and things like that. So if I was building the layout and really doing it strict to a grid, then I would build it like this. But my grid is not exactly the same as their grid. So I did my best, and what I came out with was this rendering of this page. And you can see that it's pretty faithful, and this will also help you to set tracks in your mind, so that when you are doing wireframes, which are really important, especially for major section pages or for templates, like major templates in your site, then it allows you to sort of build tracks in your mind, so that when you go and you need to do a section like this, you've already seen it, you've already done it, you've already practiced it, and now you can take the information that you've been given, or you can take what you know about your company or your product, and you can build out that section. And it may just be as simple as this, just top, kind of a lead in, the main header, some paragraph text, and a link. But you can know that this is being used in the world. The biggest company in the world is using the same sections to sell their product as well. And so it's just sort of get you into the habit of, if somebody says, can you put this together real quickly for me? You've done it. You've seen it. And the more you see it and the more you do it and the more you design things that are out there, the better you get at it. And you start to even manipulate it so that either it fits the brand of your company or your client, or it's your own personal design style that people will begin to hire you for. So hopefully this has been good for you, a little longer than I thought it was going to be. I love design. I love thinking about design. I love the strategy of design. And Apple is one of the best companies because they're so thoughtful about what they're doing. It's not quite as, it's more finesse and not quite as powerful and in your face. They're doing some very finesse design things. So if you have any comments or questions, please leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll get to them as quickly as I can. Click that thumbs up, and that helps me get some more exposure. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Click the bell notification, or the bell, and you'll get notifications of new videos when I post them. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate all the people who have subscribed and watch these videos each week. If you like them, please share them with somebody that you know who could benefit from it. And there's lots of other stuff on my channel, from no code, Webflow, and a software called Mobirise, to just some more basic HTML and CSS things. I'm also starting some other projects, so if you connect with me on Twitter, you can see some of those different things that that I personally am starting on the side, and things that might be able to help you in the future. Maybe I'll make some announcements toward that as that moves along a little bit. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.